February 2024, the Vatican abruptly halted the official sainthood cause of an Italian mystic who died back in 1947. This theological roadblock stalled a movement that currently commands millions of devoted followers around the globe. Her name was Luisa Piccarreta. Born in the small southern Italian town of Corato, she spent more than 60 years of her life confined entirely to a single bed. Curious, deliberate tone. Every morning, Luisa would wake up in a state of severe cadaveric rigidity. Her body was frozen, stiff as a corpse. No doctor could treat it, and her limbs couldn't be moved until a Catholic priest arrived to make the sign of the cross over her, instantly breaking the paralysis. To her followers, these medical anomalies were the physical manifestation of a human being completely emptying herself of her own will. Her followers will often use the metaphor of an empty glass. For God to fully enter a person, that person first has to completely empty themselves of their own desires, their own choices, and their own human agency. This state of total spiritual and physical surrender was, according to Luisa, the necessary prerequisite for the revelations she received. Dictated to her confessors over several decades, those revelations eventually filled 36 massive volumes of theological text. That specific concept is exactly what is setting off alarms inside the modern church. The erasure of human free will directly challenges foundational Catholic doctrine. The Church teaches that human agency, the active, free choice to love and follow God, is essential to salvation. This creates a massive institutional conflict. To understand why the Vatican is concerned, you have to look at how Luisa's teachings differ from standard Catholic practice. The traditional model of sainthood relies on doing God's will. You try to align your actions with what God wants. But human effort is always limited. Because we are flawed, our attempts to do the right thing always involve friction, hesitation, and separation from the divine. Luisa introduced a radical alternative, possessing God's will. In her vision, the human will is entirely subsumed, allowing God to actively operate from within the soul. According to Luisa, this restores the perfect state of grace that Adam experienced before the fall. This subtle theological shift redefines the purpose of a human life. Instead of being a servant who obeys commands from above, the individual becomes a direct, living extension of God Himself on earth. Followers put this into practice through a technique they call fusing. This involves inviting the divine will to take over mundane daily actions. A person might pray, "Come, divine will, come wash in my washing, eat in my eating, or walk in my walking." This framework extends into her most famous devotional practice, a text called The 24 Hours of the Passion, where readers meditate deeply on the specific moments of Christ's suffering. When her followers read this, they believe they are taking Christ's original divine actions, making them their own and offering them back to God on behalf of all humanity, from the first person ever created to the last. Luisa's empty glass was ultimately filled with a highly systematized, rigorously structured framework designed to elevate ordinary, flawed human actions into infinite, perfect divine acts. Which brings us back to that 2024 Vatican pause. The Dicastery for the Causes of Saints, the office responsible for evaluating potential saints, halted the canonization process specifically because of anthropological objections to her writings. The Vatican's primary fear is that Luisa's conception of the divine will leaves no room for humans to exercise their own free will. If God does absolutely everything within the soul, the individual essentially disappears. To the Church, this ignores the primacy of God's unconditional love, which requires a free human response to actually mean anything. Theologians defending her cause argue that these apparent doctrinal issues are mistranslations rather than actual flaws. They point out that Luisa was minimally educated and dictated her visions in a highly specific regional Italian dialect. This pause functions as a rigorous institutional stress test. It is the necessary step required to measure a theology this radical against strict centuries-old Catholic dogma. There is a profound irony in this institutional friction. Back in 1938, the Church placed Luisa's life's work on the Index of Forbidden Books. Her reaction was immediate and peaceful submission. She handed over all of her manuscripts without a single complaint. Today, the leaders of the Divine Will movement are instructing their millions of followers to do the exact same thing, mirror her absolute obedience, and wait patiently for the Church to issue a final ruling. Whether Luisa Piccarreta is ultimately canonized as a saint or formally shelved as a theological error, her life stands as a fascinating extreme of absolute surrender. She presented a vision of a human being emptied so completely of the self that millions now believe it held the mind of God.